Hi everybody and welcome back to Headstrong, the podcast where I sit down with a number of individuals in the public eye to talk to them about their lives, careers, experiences, but importantly, their vulnerabilities. This is still a Rugby World Cup special. I know that the Rugby World Cup is over, and congratulations once again to South Africa on that fantastic performance in the final, much to my disappointment. But I do have a couple of guests that I still wanted to speak to about this World Cup, and there's no better person to talk to about their experiences in the World Cup than this guest this week, who was Shane O'Leary. I spoke with Shane over Skype about his experiences with Rugby Canada out in Japan. It's quite interesting to hear about a Tier 2 nation and their performance throughout the tournament, and also how it works throughout the year, and also a few bits behind the scenes with the Rugby World Cup. So I hope you enjoy. Guys, I'm really excited to welcome Shane O'Leary onto the podcast. Shane, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking out some time to chat to me.
Hey, mate, no worries. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to the chat.
Awesome. So, Shane, you were at the Rugby World Cup this year in Japan. Out of interest, when did you get back from Japan?
So we left Japan on the 14th of October, I think. And I flew to Canada for a week and then came back to Ireland for a day and then back to Nottingham. So I got back to Nottingham on the 22nd of October, I think. So it was pretty go for me since I think I left the UK last
absolutely. So how did you find the rest of the tournament in terms of, did you watch it?
So we watched a bit of it, but a lot of the games weren't actually on Japanese free to air. So not all our rooms in the hotels had them. So we actually ended up streaming a fair few of them in the team room as well. But I mean, obviously, it was an amazing tournament. Like from a player's perspective, being out there, there's not much more they could have done for us. Like everything was unbelievable. The hotels were amazing. All the transport was class. And then it was so well organized from our perspective. Like there was no mishaps or anything. Everything was always on time. It was just an unbelievably well run tournament.
So that's interesting that you say that. This was your first tournament with Canada, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So I suppose you don't have too much to compare it to. But how much of that do you think was perhaps the organisation from the Rugby World Cup and the committee and the world of rugby, and then how much of that was the kind of the amazing Japanese culture that everyone got to see?
So obviously, like you said, it was my first one, and I suppose I'm basing my opinion off what fellas would have said from the last World Cup in England, and things like that. So I think a lot of it does come into culture, where like any public transport that I would take with my family or my girlfriend or friends out there, never left a second late, always arrived perfectly on time, like so efficient in everything that they do as a culture. I mean, obviously, where rugby come in and like they would have organised an awful lot of stuff for us, and would have helped to transport. Like when we were, let's say, if we were getting the bullet train, we were traveling from a place like Oeta up to Kobe, for example. When we walk into the train station, they would they'd shepherd us all through the train station nice and quickly. Everyone wearing World Rugby t-shirts. So I think it was a mix of both. But like I said, from me personally, I found that it was really well organised like that. I think the culture obviously has a big part to play in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, with it being your first tournament, it's got to have been pretty special for you. But is there something that stood out for you from your time out in Japan? Is there a particular highlight that you're going to personally take and just never forget from that tournament?
I think like I said, it was an amazing experience for me being out there for the 5.5 weeks or however long we were out there. I suppose getting my first cap out there and coming on against South Africa was pretty surreal. Against some of those people, like they're just some of the biggest people I've ever seen in my life. So physical, like they've got it all really. Like they got the physicality, that bit of flair, the speed, and then they were all incredibly nice people after the game to chat to as well. Where sometimes you think, I suppose a nation like that might not have that respect for a nation that wouldn't be as well renowned for rugby like Canada, but just kind of showed that kind of rugby community, where a bunch of blokes chatting after the game, and they were all incredibly respectful of us, and very nice. Yeah, so I think coming on in that game in front of my parents and my girlfriend was pretty amazing for me to get there.
Definitely be taking that memory with you.
Yeah.
So I've got a question. You talked about there about kind of the travel and stuff, and I'm not going to lie, over here in England, we could certainly take a leaf out of the Japanese book in terms of transport. But I was interested to ask you, do teams higher up in the rankings or, tier one nations receive preferential treatment in terms of hotel allocation and travel for the tournament, or is it all pretty equally distributed and everyone's treated fairly and stuff like that?
No, so all the teams were treated the exact same out there. So there was however many hotels, 20 hotels or whatever on the go all the time. And then so we swapped. So there was days where like England would have left the hotel and we would arrive that afternoon, for example. So us coming in as the lowest ranked team in England is one of the top. So we would have stayed in the exact same hotels as them, the exact same treatment. It's pretty fair playing field like that, which is nice. Because obviously our union wouldn't have as much money as their union, for example. But I think World Rugby looked after all the teams very equally out there, and I know it's much appreciated by some of the smaller nations.
No, definitely. And you mentioned there as well, you made your debut against South Africa, but then also in your group, you had New Zealand as well. You played Italy. Unfortunately, your match against Namibia was called off. But what is it like? Obviously, as I said, it is your first tournament. What are those emotions when you walk out to play these kind of, big teams on the biggest platform in the world? Can you just describe what that's like?
So I didn't actually get to play against Italy and New Zealand, which from a personal point of view was very frustrating. So I think by the time the South African game had come around, I was just chomping at the bit. I just wanted to get on the field so badly that I would have run around with anyone. I would have run around with another 8th team at that stage to play. So I think, so getting out there, obviously it's amazing in big stadiums, which we don't always get to play in either, with sold out crowds on telly, the whole world's watching. So that obviously plays into it a bit. I think I was just so excited to get out there that, like I said, it didn't really matter who I was playing against. But I know like the build up in the week and everything it's definitely a bit different when you're playing against New Zealand or South Africa. Like you said, two of the best teams in the world. I think you always kind of got the extra bit of nerves. You want to do that extra little bit of homework or extra bit of training or whatever's going to try and hopefully give you that edge to, I suppose, perform and put it up to these guys that you're going against, the best players in the world. It was amazing. Pretty special moment when you're going out there and you're standing across from those the likes of Franz Stein or Faf de Klerk or players like this who you just don't play against week in, week out. It's pretty amazing.
Hi everybody, sorry to interrupt the podcast, just a quick word from our two sponsors. Headstrong is very fortunate to have found two amazing sponsors and supporters for Season 2 of Headstrong, the Rugby World Cup special, forming a brilliant partnership between Headstrong, our chosen charity Restart Rugby, and themselves. They cover between them all aspects of global insurance and both have strong historical ties to the wider rugby and well-being communities. Ascot Group is a Bermuda-domiciled global specialist in insurance and reinsurance, built on a foundation of underwriting expertise, but with a culture of collaboration, dedication, empowerment, and accountability that is the fabric of the company. Their integrity is reinforced by a strong track record and dedication to clients, brokers, and partners. For more information on Ascot Group, visit www.ascotgroup.com. BMS are an entrepreneurial, agile, specialist insurance and reinsurance broker that prides itself on their reputation for exceptional client service and position as one of the leading global brokers. For more information on BMS, visit www.bmsgroup.com. Now, back to the podcast. So you obviously play your rugby over in Nottingham at the moment, but how does the year work for the Canadian rugby team, and how often do you guys get to play and meet up and get to hang out as a team, train as a team, and then you've got to play your rugby as a team? What other nations are you playing typically, and how does it work for the Canadian team?
So yeah, usually we have a summer tour, which I'd usually go on. So it's usually a June tour. I think it might be changing for next year. And then we'd have there's like a couple of A tours, kind of in September, October time sometimes, and then we'd obviously meet up for the November internationals again.
Yeah.
So last year we were in the World Repechage, so we still had to qualify for the World Cup at that stage. So we ended up in Marseille in France for 3 weeks, I think, which was a pretty cool tour as well. And then usually during the time of the Six Nations, we'd play in the ARCs. So it's the American Rugby Championships. So the teams like USA, Chile, Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina A. There'd be teams like that in that. So yeah, they're the teams we play. So we only get together ever as, like, I suppose, a full strength squad or that for usually June and November. As I think a lot of the time there's a bit of experimenting done, or some of the younger guys might get a bit more game time in the ARCs in Jan, Feb, March kind of time. So yeah, so we don't get together very regularly. And even then, obviously there's a couple of guys that play in some of the best teams in Europe are down in Super Rugby. So there's always times when not everyone's fit either. So when we get together as like a full strength squad, the answer is not that regularly. But it's usually pretty intense when we do, a couple times a day. You're trying to get as much down together as you can and get used to playing with each other again. So yeah, it's definitely difficult, especially with how far away Canada is from Europe and stuff. It's not like you're going to a day camp or 2 or 3 day camp. You're committing to a week at minimum, which can always be difficult to get with the schedules, especially when we have people playing in so many various different leagues.
Reflecting on the Rugby World Cup, how and where does Canadian Rugby sit, going into 2020? Are you guys pretty positive with the progress that you're making, or are you still building up and working towards your goals?
Yeah, so I think obviously in the last few years, Canadian Rugby has had a bit of a dip in performance. I think there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes within Rugby Canada that are getting sorted, which I think will all help our performance on the field improve going forward. I think the amount that we improved over the summer by the time we got to the World Cup was massive. And I think we are improving all the time, and we are on an upward curve now. So it's just about, I suppose, transferring some of those performances into results. Like if you look in all those games, there's massive positive moments or portions of the game, but then there's parts of the game where we let ourselves down. Like I don't think we conceded against New Zealand for the last 20 minutes of the game. And I know the damage is already done at that stage, but that's generally where they score a lot of points against teams. Against South Africa,
well, typically
we were much improved in the second half when we were down to 14 men than we were in the first half. And I know they've scored a lot of points already, but I suppose you can take a bit of pride and a bit of confidence from that. And I know that we were all very excited to play against Namibia, which I suppose it would be a team more around our level. And we were hoping to obviously get a win, as I'm sure they were. That was massively disappointing that game had to be called off. But I suppose that would have been a good indicator of where we were.
Okay, go on then, Shane. For argument's sake, let's have a think about it. What do you reckon the score would have been? How do you think that would have fared?
I think we were going to win that game. I think we were pretty confident, especially off the second half of South Africa. I know it was obviously a lot closer, and we defended pretty well in parts of that second half. So yeah, I think we probably would have won. We'd had a pretty decent week training as well. There was a lot of off-field learning, and then the one pitch session we had was very sharp, and the captain's run was very good. But I suppose obviously it was massively out of our hands of whether we could play or not. I think we were able to get to the stadium, but Namibia weren't after a couple of landslides and stuff. But yeah, no, I think we were pretty confident as a group going into that game. It was obviously one that we massively targeted before the tournament. Yeah, I suppose it's out of our hand. We got a draw. We didn't finish on no points.
So obviously for anyone listening, I think it's fair to say you don't have a Canadian accent. So I just wanted to talk to you about your childhood and where you grew up. So you were born in Ireland, but do you want to just explain how you ended up playing rugby for Canada?
Yeah, so I was born in Ireland, and my mum was born in Canada, but she's lived in Ireland since she was 2. So my grandmother would be the one with the Canadian accent, I suppose, in our family. Um, so yeah, so I would have played underage with Munster and all that kind of thing, and then would have played some club rugby with some local teams. And as I was going up through the ranks, didn't get any Irish underage honours. So my dad said to me joking one day, "Oh, you should ring Canada and play for them." And then I remember thinking, I don't even know if they have an under-20 team at that stage. That was my first thought. So we looked into it and we contacted a man called Mike Shelley, who was coaching the under-20s in Canada at that stage. So I went out and played for them. And we played our World Trophy down in Chile, which was pretty cool. It was my first time.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so I know the Irish boys that I've been friends with were going to France. So I was pretty happy to be going to Chile at that stage. We played down there and we actually came second. We lost to Italy in the final. So that was it was a pretty cool experience. And then I joined up with Grenoble into their academy in the top 14. And I played a season there before coming back to Connacht in Ireland for 3 years. I suppose I'd been in contact with the Canadians the whole way through, but I suppose the first and foremost for me, I wanted to make a career out of professional rugby, and I suppose if I declared for Canada while I was in Connacht, it would have made me an NIQ player, so non-Irish qualified, and I probably would have lost my contract in Connacht.
Yeah.
So as soon as Connacht were releasing me, I contacted Canadians again and said, "I'd absolutely love to come out to camp now if you still want me to." So then I hooked up with them. Mark Anscombe was the coach at the time and made my debut in June 2017, I think, against Georgia. So yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ever since. But I'm massively delighted that I decided to do it, and it's definitely been one of the best experiences of my life and my career. Joining up with the Canadians, I've seen an awful lot of the world. Played against some class teams, obviously been to the World Cup now, and I know my mum is delighted that I'm representing her country of birth. As Irish as she is, she still has that bit of Canadian in her, all right, like, so.
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously, I think what the Canadian rugby has done for you is so great, and it's great to see that these tier 2 nations are kind of building up, and it sounds like, you've traveled around the world so much, so you're still getting a fairly consistent funding, I suppose, but obviously not as much as, these massive tier 1 nations that are, dominating world rugby. But there's always those different levels in, quality of funding and coaching, I suppose.
Yeah. So obviously, like, it's massively different between the RFU, for example, and Rugby Canada. The funding that we receive, obviously they're a tier 1 nation, we're tier 2. I think as we've fallen further down the world rankings in the last couple of years, I think funding we've had to fight harder and harder to keep the same funding and keep our tier 2 status, which I suppose obviously we need to perform better on the field then if we want to receive more funding. But it's obviously more difficult as a tier 2 nation. And then I think like some of our travel in that American Rugby Championships was absolutely crazy when I played in it 2 years ago or 18 months ago or whatever it was. We had a game in Vancouver, then we flew down to South America, down to Uruguay, then back up to the States, then back up to Victoria, which is on Vancouver Island. Then the following week we played Argentina, then we played Chile in Argentina, then we played Chile in Chile. But like the fact that we were up and down, I think a lot of the lads hit their air miles to get goal status in those flights. We traveled 30 or 40,000 air miles in the space of 4 weeks or whatever. So I think that's a massive expense for Rugby Canada as well. And it's been it's a bit crazy, some of it, but I don't want to get into it too much, to be honest, mate. It's not my area.
No. Of course not. Totally. I was going to ask you. So this podcast is kind of it's got quite a mental approach to it, and I just wanted to talk to you about how you feel and when you watch the Irish team, do you still support the Irish team? Do you have any like obviously you've got some close friends probably in the Irish team still, because you spent a lot of your professional career in Ireland and you've got a good relationship with some of the guys. But how do you feel in terms of your approach to Irish rugby when you watch and hear about them? Is it difficult, or are you're kind of through that stage?
I'm definitely through that stage now. I suppose kind of I never really had any I'm not going to say resent or anything like that, but kind of these emotions you're speaking about towards Irish rugby. Like at the time when I was there, like I had one period where I would have been consistently starting for Connacht. There would have been a couple of injuries, and I suppose when I was starting for the Province, I was hoping that I might get I suppose my contract extended first of all anyway. But yeah, you'd always be hoping that you might get some kind of recognition, I suppose, or something. But I kind of knew I wasn't at the standard where I needed to be around the Irish squad, especially with the likes of Sexton and all those lads that
sure
were in their prime or still in their prime now. Yeah, no resent towards that. I suppose when I left Connacht, I suppose there was a time where I just didn't really want to watch them play and stuff. Kind of in that point of view, you left, and I felt that I had more to give. I kind of felt unlucky. I had an injury or two, and then I had a contract in front of me that was taken away. So I suppose I was a bit unhappy about that, but that's the nature of it, I suppose injuries can lead you to having a contract taken away, and you never know when they're going to come about. But yeah, no, I'm fully supportive of Irish rugby and all that now. I like watching them play. I still, like you said, I have a good relationship with a few of the lads, and I'm more than happy to support them now. But obviously, if Canada were playing Ireland, I would be supporting Canada.
Absolutely, Canadian rugby through and through.
Absolutely.
So, how's the season started for you at Nottingham? Obviously, you've got this 2019-20 season down there. How are the boys feeling?
Yeah, so we had a great start to the season in the league. We won our first 2 games, so that was good. And then we lost the next 3, and then we just won again at the weekend. So they won all the games before I came back, and then we lost 3 in a row when I came back. But we're back to winning ways now. That's good. Yeah, we've been pretty close in them all. We just kind of let ourselves down with like a 10 or 15 minute period where we concede a couple of tries, or we walk them down the field with a couple of penalties in a row, and they're not really having to work very hard for their points, where they've made us work a lot harder for ours. And I suppose we've just fallen outside the bracket of bonus points. But it was a bit drier at the weekend, and the field held up a bit better than some of the fields we played on have, which suits us a bit better, as we tried to play quite an expansive brand of rugby, and we managed to get a 5-point win. So yeah, it was great to get another win. Finally get a win back since I got home. Yeah, we're looking forward to we've the cup coming up now for the next few weeks, and then we've got Cobb at home or Cobb away for Christmas on Sky, so that'll be a big one for the boys. They'll be pretty excited for that. There'll be a couple of nice haircuts and energy around the squad for that game. Yeah, so it's been a decent start. We're 3 from 6 in the league, so hopefully we'll get a couple of wins now and get back on track to where we want to be.
Yeah, definitely. So what does this season hold for you in particular, and maybe looking into the future in 4 years' time at the next World Cup, and then your kind of future in rugby and elsewhere? What does your future hold, and what are your goals?
That's a good question. So looking forward to the next World Cup. Obviously, from my personal experience in this World Cup, I feel like I didn't get enough of it. I was obviously pretty disappointed to miss out on a couple of squads and things like that, which I struggled with at the time, but I'm okay with it now, reflecting on Japan. So yeah, I feel like I've got some business left at a World Cup, so I'd be hoping that I'd still be about in the next 4 years and hopefully get to play in France 2023. And then, yeah, for this season, I suppose I just want to crack on here and, yourself, consistently improve. Kind of have a couple of things that I need to work on that'll hopefully get me some more international minutes come around the next window. And then, so I haven't had a taste of top division rugby before. I'm hungry to try and, I suppose, get back to a top league again. But I know that my performance is my currency, so I need to perform well for Nottingham and Canada when I get the opportunities to, and then hopefully. yeah, I don't know, maybe get picked up by a top league again. But that's out of my hands. So I'll just be focusing on my performance here and hopefully playing well each week and winning and kicking my goals and things like that. So yeah, it's I'm very much so living in the now. So hopefully I'll just play well here for this season, and sure we'll see what happens then.
Definitely. So just retouching on just being left out of some of the squads in the World Cup, just before we finish, I just wanted to speak to you about kind of those emotions about being left out of those squads. Obviously, you have that disappointment, but how does it motivate you for the next week? How does it make you feel, immediately when you hear that team squad news? But then you have
so usually the coach will tap you on the shoulder beforehand and have a word with you. So when I got tapped on the shoulder, I was trying not to let the tears out as he was speaking to me. Obviously, I wouldn't have been very happy. I would have been quite pissed off. So I suppose I just went away and had a bit of time on my own. Called my parents and my girlfriend and kind of spoke to them then a few hours later. And I suppose you calm down at that stage and you start trying to think of it a bit more logically and try and figure out how you're going to try and get into the team next week. I was massively upset the first 2 weeks. I suppose you just kind of, it's obviously out of your hands selection, so it's something that you can't control. So my dad's always told me, it's one man's opinion. You can't let it get to you too much. You just got to make sure you got to stay process oriented and focus on your performance. Stick to the task at hand and try and keep improving that way to try and get into these squads. The difficult part for me was there's some guys in the squad asking me why I'm not playing and saying they think I should be and stuff. So that was that probably made it a bit harder. But like I said, I loved absolutely every moment of it when I got out there on the field. But yeah, it was definitely a difficult time for me, and I suppose you're trying to enjoy it as much as you can, but when you're not being selected, it can be very, very difficult. But especially for the first day or two. But I suppose you can't be a sap around the squad, and you can't be taking the energy from the squad. And you got to be a good team player, and I suppose you always want to be a good person as well as a good player. So yeah, I was Pete Nelson, the guy that was starting, would have been one of my best mates on tour, so I was fully supportive of him and trying to help him as much as he could. But yeah, no, it was definitely a difficult time, and I know my my mum and dad were kind of asking me a lot, am I okay? And my missus too, and I suppose they probably got a bit of a brunt of me being a bit cranky sometimes, but I suppose it's just part of life, and it's part of the job description. I suppose you got to take the good with the bad, and it definitely made me appreciate coming on against South Africa an awful lot more after not getting that opportunity to. In the first two games, I really relished it, and I was very disappointed in the last game. I was involved again on the bench, so I would have absolutely loved to have got a second cap out there. So I suppose one cap from 4 games wasn't exactly my goal when I was going out there, but so yeah, I'll hopefully be around for the next one and get that opportunity to get a few more.
Look forward to 2023, and hopefully we'll see you out there, obviously. And but I suppose, being left out of those squads, it leads me on to my very final question, which I ask all my guests is, you've got to be quite headstrong. But what does the word headstrong mean to you?
Headstrong to me, I suppose, is having that confidence to back yourself. When I was younger, I wouldn't have been very confident in like some of the environments that I would have went into, especially when there's kind of bigger, more well-known players, where I feel like as a person now, I've grown from those experiences where I'm a lot more confident in myself, kind of take it or leave it. I am who I am. Some people are obviously going to like me, some people aren't, and that's fine. I have nothing against those people if they like me or not, which I suppose has transferred onto my performances in the field, where I'm confident enough now to back myself to say, no, we're not doing that, we're doing this. We'll discuss it after if that's the best option or not, but I'm driving the team around the field. That's what I want to do. So I suppose headstrong for me is having that confidence just to be yourself, in rugby and out of rugby. So yeah, I suppose that self-confidence thing is massive.
Definitely. Well, Shane, thank you so much for talking to me. I've really, really appreciated it. It's been great. Best of luck with Nottingham and to you this season, obviously. And we hope, best of luck to Rugby Canada as well in their future and all their endeavours. And hopefully we'll get to see you out on the pitch soon.
Thanks, mate. Absolutely love chatting to you. So cheers.
Awesome. Thanks, Shane.
No worries.
Well, guys, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much to Shane for taking some time out to talk to me on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And it was so interesting to hear about a few bits and bobs behind the scenes of the Rugby World Cup. We are still supporting Restart Rugby, and we've raised already over £2,000 for this fantastic charity. So thank you so much to anyone that bid on some of the auction items as well. I'm now going to hand over to Damien Hopley to tell you some more about Restart Rugby. And see you next week.
My name is Damien Hopley, Group Chief Executive of the Rugby Players Association. Restart is the official charity of the RPA, and the charity provides crucial support to current and former professional rugby players suffering from serious injury, illness or hardship. Since 2005, Restart has invested over 1.7 million into player welfare and support by funding medical treatment, rehabilitation or disability support, financial support and emotional support by providing a 24/7 confidential counselling service. And we're the only body in English rugby that invests in mental health support. 1 in 4 people in the UK will be affected by mental illness in any year. Rugby players are no exception, and often the pressures and strains that act as a catalyst to mental health issues are magnified for professional athletes. Players often find it difficult to cope with the transition out of rugby, and the reality is that over 60% of players reported mental health issues post-retirement, and over 50% of players take 2 years or longer to be in control of their lives post-rugby. In 2008, the Rugby Players Association and Restart launched a 24/7 telephone helpline and counselling service to provide vital mental health support to those players and families that were facing struggles. 42 current and former players accessed the confidential counselling last year. More than 140 players have accessed the counselling service over the past 3 seasons. Every year, Restart spends up to £60,000 on our confidential counselling service to help support our players. Without support from donors and fundraisers, Restart would simply not be able to continue this vital support for our players. Sadly, these mental health issues can lead to devastating consequences. Suicide is the biggest killer of men under 45 in the UK, and rugby players are not immune. It's great to see the players talking more openly about their mental health struggles within rugby and after they finish playing. Thank you for all your support towards Restart. Without people like yourselves, we could not help players and their families in the way that we do. So thank you all very much.